I've had a question about working with granite, and I thought it'd be easier to answer it on a video here than just on an email. So I've got the questions from the person here about working with granite, and we'll just go through those. One thing quickly from the start is when you are starting any of these projects, forget your design, forget everything except how much tesserae you're going to need for a project, because that will kill it for either your budget or your time. So work out the area you're going to or you want to work on, work out how much tesserae, what tesserae you're going to use, and how much can you afford on it, and how much time can you afford to work on it. I mean, you can go and get lumps out the ground and cut it all down by hand yourself if you've got a long time for your mosaic. But the thing to realize is prepping your tesserae is not mosaic work, it's labourer's work. It's got nothing to do with your mosaic. You need to know how to use a hammer and hardy, you need to be adept with it, but getting your tesserae together is just the labour part of it. Your mosaic work doesn't start until you're actually designing and then setting down the mosaic. So just keep that in mind. Okay, granite. Chap mentioned that on a previous video I said I don't like using it. The reason I don't like it is it's very hard. It's much harder material than marble, and at the end of all the extra work that you've got, the colours aren't that brilliant anyway for it. The thing is though, with granite, a lot of companies doing granite worktops, so you can get offcuts, you can get the freebies from there. So if you're prepared to spend the extra time and the work, yeah, you've got to supply free material there. The problem is it's usually quite thick. You're going to have to do a lot of cutting down, and generally you need something like a wet saw. So this gentleman, he has a wet saw. He's got access to a lot of this material. Is it suitable to use? Talking first about using the wet saw, cutting it into 8mm by 8mm strips. So 8mm, that's what, 5/16 of an inch, and then cutting those with a hammer and hardy. He's saying with the wet saw it's quite a bit of work to do that, so he's thinking about cutting it into rods, still 8mm 5/16 of an inch thick, but 3cm width, so that's 1 3/16 of an inch width, and then cutting those down with the hammer and hardy. The problem is 3cm width is just about the width of the of your hammer blade. So when you cut that, chances are you'll get a couple of tesserae, but the third one, the fracture will be going off. And don't forget, we're talking about granite here, so you're going to be using the technique for cutting hard material, and it will actually add to it. If you're cutting rods, you really want them about 2cm width, so that's 1/6 of an inch width, because then you just make two cuts, one into the strip, cut that strip in half, and then you've got your two 10mm tesserae. Also, 8mm thickness is a little bit out. Generally the material you get, generally speaking, is going to be 10mm. That's 3/8 of an inch thick. That's your standard one. So if you're mixing granite and marble, which you can do for a mosaic, you might find that you've got the different thicknesses in there. So wet saw to pencils or rods, say wet saw into the rods, but make sure they're the 2cm width. Another option he was talking about was just using a hammer, breaking the whole lot up, and then when they're small enough, cutting using the hammer and hardy. To my mind, I wouldn't bother, not unless you've really got a lot of time and you've got nothing else to do, because it's just so labour intensive and you're not really getting anything out of it. And with the granite, it will be a lot of work just to get the tesserae from it. I once did a mosaic where, before I had the wet saw, it was 24,000 pieces, and I just sat there with a big pile of the tiles from the store, cut them down on the hardy until they got smaller and smaller, until I could cut them with the hammer and hardy. And all I discovered from that was, same as most probably 2,000 years ago, cutting tesserae is really boring. especially when you're talking about that amount. You don't really get anything. Let's say you need to know how to use a hammer and hardy properly. You need to be adept with it, but please remember, getting your tesserae together is just labourer's work. That's it. Your mosaic work starts with your design when you're starting placing the tesserae. So that's all really dead time. But obviously you've got to look at the time you have, you've got to look at the budget you have and go with what's best. So I'm not saying don't use the granite, just bear in mind it is a very hard material to work, and personally I just don't like the colours with it. Right, hopefully that's answered some of those. Thanks very much.